This edition of MacVoices is supported by you, our viewers and listeners, through our new Patreon campaign. If you get value from MacVoices, please consider helping support the show by visiting patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to Mac Notables on MacVoices. This is a talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's been a while since we've done a Mac Notables show, and it's been a lot longer, I'm embarrassed to say, since we talked to Adam Engst of TidBITS and TidBITS.
I'm busy.
Yeah.
I'm busy.
You're busy. You're okay. Well,
you know, this whole sell and take control thing, that was mainly Tanya that it freed up, not me.
Well, the funny thing is that it doesn't feel like, to me, it's been as long as it has, just because we've done a couple user group appearances together, and we don't record all of those. So I guess the last one was just, a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
But then when I started going back through the roster, it's like, holy cow, it's been a long time since Adam's been on.
Yeah, and probably there was the show we did when we sprang the whole take control thing on you.
That's
but
right.
that in some ways doesn't quite count. So
Yeah.
that was different. But yeah, it's been a while. So
Yeah.
Keep him busy.
Well, I
hanging on street corners.
Yeah, you don't exactly strike me as the kind of guy that sits with his feet up a whole lot.
No, I run.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I use my feet a lot.
I set you up for that, yeah. So we need to play a little bit of catch up here. How are things going post Take Control and with the new content venture?
So, as far as we can tell, because we are not involved on a day-to-day basis, Take Control seems to be doing pretty well. Joe has gotten a lot of books out. He's hit all the important, deadlines in terms of being ready for Apple. For when people need the help, the book has to be there. And so he got out, 2 High Sierra books, and the upgrading one and the full Take Control book, and then also a Take Control of iOS 11. So, it was great to see those pop out. And Glenn Fleischman got his iOS 11 practical networking and security book out. So they seem to be going strong. It's never ending with Apple. And that's partly why we sold, right? That we'd done this for 14 years. And at least in the early few years, you didn't have to do it every year, right? It was 18 months, sometimes longer between OS updates. Back in the Panther, Tiger, Leopard days. And so, but once it becomes this annual cycle, oh man, it's just tough. To be on top of it and be ready, and what's going to be the same this year, what's going to be different in terms of how we have to juggle the schedules and the editing and all that. So don't miss that one bit.
So seriously, I know you have, theoretically a little more time in your hands. I know Tanya probably has a lot more.
So one of the things but she has more, but on the she's actually working on a Take Control book right now. She's writing one. So hers is Take Control of Mac Basics, and it's a very significant upgrade from. She'd done a book called Read Me First some years back the idea started as a way of just having the stuff people needed to know at the beginning of a book, so we didn't have to assume that everyone needed to be told to click or double click or those kinds of things, the super basic things. And so, Read Me First was fairly popular as a free book. We were just kind of giving away to make sure everyone was this tall to play. But she and Joe came up with the idea of turning it into a full-fledged Take Control of Mac Basics, because there's still a lot of people out there who are either getting started with Macs or they've never really known what they're doing. Someone set them up and they can do 3 things, but they want to go a little bit further. We hear from user group. We go to user group presentations all the time, and we hear from these people. These are even people who are in user groups, and they say, "Oh, I want to be able to do more, but I just need basics. I don't need anything more than that." So we'll see. But so she's been writing that. She's finishing that up hopefully very soon. And she's done some editing. She's edited a Take Control book or 2. Joe goes to iCloud book, stuff like that. But the truly funny thing that she did, which in the change your life kind of category, was Cornell was looking for someone to teach a gym class on a running gym class. And so she's like, that sounds fun. So 3 days a week just ended. 3 days a week from the all semester. She's been popping into Cornell to take undergraduates running.
Okay.
Which, it doesn't pay squat. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, it's not, they do pay, but not very much. It's just kind of crazy what, it is not a career in any way, but she just had a lot of fun doing it. But it did take a certain amount of time every day, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday to, get up and have to be ready to go running. And I mean, realistically, this is one of those things where, you got to go do the running and everything, but they wanted someone who was going to show up reliably and take attendance.
Yeah.
Because that's what matters.
Sure.
Realistically,
Sure.
gym classes are pass fail, and you fail if you miss more than 4.
Yeah.
That's the deal. And there's makeups. I mean, there was one person who apparently used all the makeups. But on the other hand, as Tanya said, it was fascinating because this undergraduate, had missed the 4 requisite classes pretty quickly, and then had to do a makeups. But it was one of those, these people are, 17, 18, 19 years old, and you got to learn, you got to do this stuff. And so the person had been put into this position and needed to hit all the makeups, and did. So it worked out, but it was touch and go. I was betting against them. So I don't know. They missed 4 classes already. I missed 4 classes in the first 3 weeks or something. Like, okay, someone doesn't have their act together.
Yeah, that's not good.
But hey, they pulled it out. So, and I've done very good at not mentioning even gender, much less names.
Yes.
Well, all that FERPA stuff. So
yeah.
I don't actually person's full name. I just know the person's first name, but you got to be careful these days.
Oh yeah, I would have edited that. I want no part of this. In fact, I probably would have blurred your face a little bit when you said it, so they couldn't even read your lips.
The FERPA black helicopters would have come and gotten you, man.
Yeah.
They kind of got me, but yeah. So she's had a lot more time there, but has ended up putting it to good use in terms of both working on Take Control stuff, TidBITS Content Network writing and editing, and then this gym class, which was kind of fun.
Well, that's good.
So for me, the TidBITS Content Network stuff has been, it's kind of just adding more work onto the TidBITS load. And so, yes, I don't have Take Control books to put out and distribute and all of that and do marketing for, which is a relief. Don't get me wrong, but I would say that it just changed my workload from one thing to another thing. So it wasn't like I have vastly more time to spend doing other stuff, but the TidBITS Content Network has been a whole lot of fun, and I've really actually enjoyed kind of getting to know people in the consultant community and the reseller community, sort of the higher end support folks out there, because one, they know fascinating stuff, right? These are people who do interesting things, and they're seeing interesting problems, and also, our goal with TidBITS has always been to help people with their technology, right? And TidBITS is one way of doing that, but there's lots of other ways to do that. And so with TidBITS Content Network, we're doing the same thing, but doing it in, sort of through these folks as intermediaries. And, if we can help them to help other people more, then, hey, that's still hitting our mission statement pretty strong. And so that's been really good. And also just sort of learning more about the world of kind of high-end stuff that you just don't see. Like in businesses, I mostly work with individuals, but in businesses, they're really interested in managed services. If you've got 30 Macs or 50 Macs or something like that, you're not going around and touching each one of them every day. That's too much work if you're the IT support staff. If you need to install a new version of some app or a new version of the operating system, that has to be automated. It has to be managed. It has to be, or you go mad. So, that's been learning about that whole world of things has been quite interesting, because that was certainly not true when I did consulting back in 1990. So when you really did go around and touch everything every time it needed to be updated or fixed or whatever.
Yeah, the world has changed. Well, I know sort of along those lines, you attended the Jamf Nation Users Conference. We just talked to David Ginsburg about it a little bit, but he didn't say anything. He said he saw you. He didn't talk anything about how much the bail was. But I wanted to see, what your take on it was, and since this is something a little bit new for you, what were your biggest surprises?
Oh, it was just fascinating. I mean, again, it's not like I don't intellectually know some of these facts, but to just be randomly chatting with some guy, and I was like, "Oh, so where do you work?" I'm in Home Depot, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I should have picked that up from the hat and the shirt." And I mean, one of the the icebreaker lines is, "So how many Macs do you have under management?" He's like, "Yeah, 6,000, something like that." I'm like, "Holy cats," And I was like, "Oh, is that like because you have so many stores?" He's like, "No, none of those are stores. That's just corporate." It's just, I mean, and that was a small number. The big story, of course, is IBM has 125,000 Macs. I forget all the exact numbers. SAP has 14,000 and Capital One has 6,000. And, it just keeps going. These companies have tons of Macs. And it's interesting because on the one hand, I would say that the myth that Apple is not used in business is still alive and well. People really do not think that Macs are in big business, and that's just not true.
It is a myth. But it's a myth that's still out there.
It's still true to the extent of, there's a lot more PCs, but thanks in large part to these management tools, Macs are coming in a really big way. And so what happens is a company, usually companies, they're not forcing people to do things much one way or the other, because it's all about user productivity, right? People are going to be the most productive on the hardware that they like using, on the operating systems that they enjoy using, that they're fluid with. And so if you gave me a PC, I could use it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm good at computers, but I would be significantly less productive than on my Macs. And the same is going to be true of a lot of people. So what companies have realized is if they create what are these called user choice programs, where they just say, you pick the computer you want, we'll give it to you. Here's your choices, this Mac, that PC, whatever. And people can do that. It turns out everyone's happier. And happy employees make for better employees, more productive employees, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, there is always the issue of money, right? Because Macs are more expensive. Simple fact, whatever Apple does when they drop prices, et cetera, big whoop, PCs are always cheaper. It's simply the case. However, and this is where every person I talked to said, yeah, but it's the total cost of ownership. That Mac is going to be in that place, for that person for 2 years, 3 years, whatever their lease or replacement cycle is. And in that time, they will have, X% fewer support calls, which cost the company money. And the machine will have a higher resale value at the end. So when you say this 3-year-old iMac or 3-year-old MacBook Pro, we're getting you a new one, well, that's not a worthless machine. The company can get some money back for that. I was chatting with one guy at a school district who said they got $73 a piece for iPad 2s. Mm-hmm. I mean, iPad 2s, for goodness sakes. I'm surprised they got anything for them. But, the fact is an iPad 2 is still a pretty cool device if it's that or nothing. So, there's all sorts of possibilities. And so I think it was really just fascinating to see people who were viewing the Apple world through this lens of, I manage 1,000 devices, or I manage 7,000 devices. And what do you do that? Well, you need something like Jamf Pro, Adigy, SolarWinds, Kaseya. There's a couple simple MDM. You need something along those lines, a mobile device management platform. And Jamf Pro seems to be the biggest and sort of most notable one in the Apple world because they only work on Apple devices. So many of the other ones are cross-platform, which means they may be more useful in some ways to an organization that has multiple different types of devices, but they may not be as good for the Apple devices. So, but regardless, it's just one of those fascinating worlds to dip your toe into and just see this stuff. I mean, one thing, so I wrote a big article about this. It's just posted on the TidBITS site today. And but one thing I didn't put in there was that Jamf was announcing a partnership with Microsoft. And because Microsoft, of course, does device management. They have, what do they call it? Microsoft Configuration Manager, I think it's called. And then they have a cloud service called Intune. And this is big honking Windows. I mean, these are this is going for organizations that have tens of thousands of Windows machines, hundreds of thousands of Windows machines, as well as like the Microsoft Business 365, which is the next level up from Office 365. And so chatting with a guy named Brad Anderson, who's Microsoft VP in this department, it was really, really interesting. I couldn't figure out how to like distill this down to fit in the article and talk about it, but he was talking about security mostly. And what he said is it used to be organizations thought about security as having a perimeter at the firewall, right? So you had your network, and as long as you could keep the bad guys from outside your firewall, you were good. But everyone's doing cloud stuff now, so there is no firewall anymore in terms of the strong perimeter. And even if there were a firewall, even if they weren't doing quite as much cloud stuff, everything's mobile, right? People are taking their devices here and there and everywhere, and thus connecting in from all over the place. And so, what his big push was trusted people. So identity was the key to everything. Trusted identity on trusted devices running trusted apps. And he's like, when you get all of that figured out, then it's not so much that you have perfect security, but that you can tell when things are going wrong. And this was the stuff that was just utterly mind-blowing to me. He was saying that Microsoft, because all these people are logging, if you're using Microsoft Intune or Cloud Configuration Manager, whatever, you're connecting to Microsoft servers to authenticate against, what do they call it, Azure Active Directory. They get 450 billion authentications a month. So that's a lot of people checking in, and every time that check-in happens, information about that managed computer is transferred to Microsoft. And they have all sorts of historical information. So they actually can really tell when something like, gee, you weren't in China yesterday. Why is your machine logging in from China? And so they have, basically they can do things like in real time say, that login from China, could you please enter your multi-factor authentication token again? That we're not asking you for it when everything's looking good. We can be nice and just stay out of the way. So it's not like you got to be constantly holding your token up or remembering your password or anything. But as things start looking weirder and weirder, they can ramp up the level of security. And again, this is totally eye-opening to me that that Microsoft had this level of awareness at a security level of what was going on in the world. And he said that basically, if some new threat happens, because this is in Windows world, there's threats all the time. He said some new threat happens, they can actually, because it's all cloud-based, as soon as they've got enough information to know what's happening with it, they can roll that out to everybody instantaneously. So it really is this kind of real-time proactive protection against. It's not that they're like stopping. What they're doing is they're preventing people from getting inside the trusted identity circle, and so your corporate data doesn't get potentially revealed just because no one has seen this attack before. That they can get to this really quickly. So all that was, was just truly interesting. And this guy, man, did he know his numbers? He had this and that and the other thing. Like, they distribute 1 billion Windows patches a month. Again, just the scale of all this is mind blowing. But what they ran into was they don't get any information from Macs. And so when they buy the partnership with Jamf, they can actually create it so that the Macs are bringing their information in, so their telemetry on security threats becomes better, and they can apply access profiles, they call them. And basically, so if you want to get to this corporate database, we have to know that you're trusted, because it's HIPAA. Like, this is a healthcare database. You're in some big healthcare organization. We have to know that you haven't been hacked. And now that's being applied to Macs too. So, again, just stuff that normal users never have to worry about. Although I did ask the guy, I was like, well, so if I subscribe to Office 365 as an individual, could you tell me if I'm being hacked? And he's like, well, we don't, but we could. Just a certain level of, this stuff is too hard. You cannot possibly, as an individual, understand or be able to fight off all of the threats that are out there on the internet. And it's just the same way no one can run a mail server these days on their own. It's too hard. Technically you can, but you shouldn't.
Right.
You'll do it badly. You'll get hacked. You'll be used for relaying. You will be damaging the internet if you run a mail server, in essence. And you leave that to the big boys who have thousands of employees and incredible data centers designed to do that right. And that's kind of what security seems to me to be coming down to, because it's organized crime. Seriously, it's real. There's two groups are doing online security. It's the organized crime and state intelligence agencies. State intelligence agencies, probably not too much of an issue for normal people. Organized crime, probably a problem. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not going to try to. There's a limit to how much I can do to prevent the mafia from going after me. So as a fascinating experience talking to all these people, and just hearing some of the stories, about healthcare facilities, hospitals that are giving every patient who checks in an iPad that tells them all of their medical records, all of their doctor information, so they can know who is completely on their treatment team. It controls the Apple TV in the room and controls the lighting and temperature, sort of all via this iPad. And then as soon as they check out, it completely wipes the iPad and sets it up for the next person. That's super cool and actually really hard to do if you don't have a managed device.
But some of this. Okay, so let's be real clear here. I sometimes will snipe at Microsoft for lots of reasons, and I think at least some of them are justified. But
Sure.
This is not sniping at Microsoft. This is, I don't care if it was Google or fill in any name you want. Having that level of access to the information on those corporate machines.
No. They don't have access to the information on the corporate machines.
Well, then how?
They are being used as a directory service to log in and provide information for the company, the organization that is managing the machine, to be able to set up access profiles.
Yeah, okay, but
Microsoft does not have access to the machine because they can't, right? No one's going to give Microsoft access to their machines. Doesn't happen. This is a layer of software which is management. So it's to be able to manage the software. So you can say, this PC, its version of Windows is out of date. Its Office version is out of date. I want to update those. Microsoft, well, in the case of Windows or Office, might be handling some side of that, but go to the Mac side. Your version of Adobe Creative Cloud is out of date. We want to update that. That's what your IT staff does. But the fact that the login information is sort of the fact that there's this telemetry that goes back from a security standpoint is not revealing any of that. And again, these are all company machines owned by companies who are explicitly paying for the service to do this. This isn't individuals randomly signing up for something at all. This is a company saying it is tremendously important to us that our data not be hacked, so that we have to ensure that all of our employees have decent security habits, right? So how many people have their passcode on their iPhones be 111111? Well, if it's a managed iPhone, you can say that's not possible. And so the person can try putting it in, and the profile will say, no, you have to have a real passcode, because we aren't allowing that. Because this isn't your iPhone, this is our iPhone. And it's really, I mean, you really have to think of it from the point of view of the company or the organization, these healthcare providers, right? They are bound by HIPAA. They cannot let patient medical records go anywhere. Period. I mean, that's like lightning bolt from the heavens if they do.
Yeah. I know they can't, but I guess if
that's the whole point.
Yeah. If anybody is controlling the access to the machines, I guess it is possible to just keep the data separate from the access. It is completely possible, and it is completely done.
Okay. I mean, again, if Microsoft had a backdoor to be able to log into all these machines, no one would do it. I mean, completely wouldn't happen. It is utterly unthinkable, because it is just unthinkable. The whole point is that this is something that allows people to be able to take advantage of the security side of it as they're managing their own devices. So it's IT staff that's doing the managing, right? It's not Microsoft that's doing the managing.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
So the IT staff, for the company says, here are the policies that we believe are necessary for our business, which presumably they have been told by the executives to say it is important that this is secure and that's secure, and like, okay, we'll go make that happen. And so, no, I think this is one of the fallacies of a lot of cloud stuff. Honestly, is that people think that just because something is in the cloud, that there's full access to everything. And it doesn't help when you have moron firms like Yahoo, having their entire user databases hacked and stolen. But that is a completely separate issue from managed services. And
you just said it. I think that's part of the problem here with some of this, is that you wake up and in the morning news, Target's hacked, Yahoo's hacked. I can't even.
Sony's hacked, LinkedIn's hacked, Kickstarter's hacked. We could just go on.
Everybody's hacked. It seems. Yeah.
But you have to believe. First of all, you haven't heard the Google hack, the Apple hack, the Microsoft hack. Those haven't happened.
Oh, you're right.
And the reason in part is that those companies, believe me, they're targeted, and they're targeted in huge ways all the time. Yeah. But they understand better. Particularly, Yahoo should have known better. They were just dumb. But many of these companies, sorry, I shouldn't say that. They were dumb because, in fact, the guy who was, I think, the CFO of Yahoo at the time had, when some of this stuff was going on, and when it comes out later, he says, I had been telling them that we needed to do better. And I wasn't being listened to. I wasn't getting the resources, et cetera, et cetera. This stuff, I won't say it's not rocket science, because it is, but it's not unknown, right?
Right.
People know that they're doing this. I've heard of Google had this problem where what was the NSA was trying to figure out to tap into communications between Google's data centers. And let me tell you, I know some people on the Google security team, they were spitting mad. These people really do understand, and Google and Microsoft, frankly, are the two big ones. Apple's all consumer, so in some ways it's a big target, but it's not the same kind of business information as probably that Google and Microsoft have, Microsoft in particular. So these companies know they have the big red target on their backs at all times. They know they are being hammered from all sides, literally nonstop. And so everything is designed to accommodate that. And not that they're perfect. I mean, something could go wrong. Google didn't know the NSA was trying to hack into their data center links when that happened. But it was something that they they have huge teams that are thinking very hard about every imaginable threat and trying to remedy it. And all that said, again, not that it would be good if Microsoft was hacked, but it is not data. It is it is a directory, and the directory is a different thing, especially when Microsoft doesn't have the credentials. They just know who the people are or the machines are. So they're not being able to store all the information so that someone could just go log into the Microsoft database and go, oh, look, I can find Chuck's stuff and I'm going to go log as him now. Right. That's just not the way it works in this world anymore. So, we're way beyond that. But any of it, it is fascinating what happens when you see companies going the next step to do stuff that would be previously unimaginable, like giving an iPad to every patient who walks in and have it be personalized to them and their room as soon as they turn it on, because it's tied to the patient information system that the hospital runs and they're in room 236, and that's connected to that Apple TV and these, lighting, like Crestron lighting and blind things, so you can raise and lower the blinds without getting out of bed, And, a lot of these things, a lot of like the healthcare ones are really aimed at improving how people feel. Because you're in the hospital, you don't feel good. But, some of it also is probably going to reduce costs. If you don't have to call the nurse every time you have a question, or you just want the light turned off or whatever it is, that's going to help and reduce some level of unnecessary costs. But, I said in healthcare, I think it really is primarily about improving patient outcomes. That, the other big example that was talked about was the Bungie Foundation, which provides iPads. They've done iPads for like every kid who goes to Seattle Children's Hospital. And again, same thing. They get it there. They get an iPad with age-appropriate stuff. They can actually request new apps. And, hopefully it makes being in the hospital as a kid suck a little less.
Yeah.
That's all it's going to be. It's going to suck a little less. And but I mean, they've helped 123,000 kids through that program. That's pretty cool.
And some of this makes me feel a little bit better about the idea that maybe we can. I know we're not there, and we're still a long way from it, but we can get electronic medical records that are reliable and consolidated, and because every time you go to the doctor, or especially if you have to go to a new doctor, you have to regurgitate your entire medical history, and it's like I don't remember
address. I'm like, really, you don't have this?
Yeah, and
everyone else in the world has it. Why don't you?
And I don't remember when I had a hangnail in the 10th grade, but for some reason you think that's important, So that would be. I mean, I would love it if there was a way for me to either give them access to my medical records, or to take them with me and say, here's my iPhone, let me send it to you.
It's getting there. I mean, I don't know vast amounts about this field, but here in Ithaca, we have the Cayuga Medical Centers, our kind of local healthcare consortium. And Cayuga Medical Center, they do have a system that seems to have all my records. Unfortunately, I still have to, when I go to a new doctor, they don't necessarily have access to that, et cetera, et cetera. But, it's getting better. And my uncle for a long time used to work for Kaiser out in California. And they're a huge organization, and they were all over this stuff. I mean, it's like you have to be able to go to any Kaiser facility, and we have to know all your information. And, my uncle said that his boss would, they were doing these patient information systems. And he said the boss was like, this is not about money, et cetera, et cetera. This is about people, because if someone goes to the emergency room and we don't know who they are, we could give them medication that could kill them. If we know that they are allergic to this, or, they have this reaction or whatnot, that could save their lives. And that's what we're here for. We're all geeks. We're all the computer people, but, you have to view yourself as, saving lives, because that's really what these systems can do as well. So it's but as you're absolutely right though. It's just it's taking a long time, and it's being really funky, and I don't know. The all I can say is that this is one of the things that technology does well, and hopefully having more broadly spread technology can make this happen more quickly, or again, even just people knowing that this hospital in San Francisco or San Diego and this other one called Geisinger Health are doing these iPad programs, and Seattle Children's, they can go to their hospital and say, I read about these other places that are doing iPad programs. How come you're not? Well, because we don't have the patient information system. Well, why don't you have the patient information system? You must have it in the back end. Why aren't you exposing this? Why can't I see all of my test results in real time? Why do I have to call someone to come and tell me a test result?
But even now, because I know my doctor or my health system, if you will, because we no longer have doctors, we have health systems, have given me a portal in, and it is great. But at the same time, you can't help but wonder once in a while, how secure is this? And maybe it's because we spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of thing and paying attention and reading the articles. Maybe there are a lot of people that just aren't that worried about it. But
and people may or may not be. But I will say I have not heard of big healthcare breaches.
No, you're right. You're right.
I mean, my understanding is that HIPAA is pretty significant in terms of its security requirements. I know on TidBITS Talk, we have a guy who's a doctor, and I've talked to him a little bit about some of the stuff, and he believes that, even some doctors are not doing as much as they should, to do this. Like you should be having, this air gap between this machine, and nothing gets sent out via whatever. But I don't know the extent to which people are being as compliant as they should be, but I think that is one of the big points of HIPAA, is to say, no, you can't throw the FileMaker database on your website. It doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
Like when I get email from my doctor, I get an email message telling me I have to log into the portal to read the message from my doctor, which of course is something stupid, like you can come in and get a flu shot now. Right. It's like, right. And on the one hand, you'd feel like, geez, I had to do this to be told I could get a flu shot. But, obviously, if I was getting results on my AIDS test or my cancer, tests or something like that, I'd probably not want to be going through my email, Yeah. So, life, the world is harder than it looks. That's one of the things that and I actually blame Apple for this a little bit. Apple's like, oh, everything can be easy. No, everything cannot be easy. Many things have to be hard, because you cannot eliminate all the complexity and the ifs, ands, and buts and maybes and why nots from a lot of these systems. That they have to be complicated and hard and big and ugly, because they have to match what the real world does. So many things that Apple does, trying to pretend that things are easy, are really glossing over, which is again why there's a business for Apple consultants and resellers and people who are technical to go and help, because there's a lot that's going on underneath the hood. You go look at the console log sometime if you want to see what's really going on in your Mac, and you will not understand it. Apple does a great job of putting that veneer on top, and while I approve strongly of that in general, I do think it is important not to get too deceived to thinking that things are in fact simple, because they aren't. People are hard, and when it comes down to it, everything is people. The healthcare stuff, well, it's tricky because we've got good people and we've got bad people, and the bad people want to take advantage of the good people. And, so now we make rules that hopefully protect the good people from the bad people. And that makes life harder for the good people, but it also makes life harder for the bad people. You get the picture. And I'm just saying that, the world's tough, the world's complicated, and our systems have to encapsulate that, because if they don't, they will fail.
I feel like you've gone off the deep end on philosophy here in some fashion, but
I was only one class away from getting a philosophy degree at Cornell too, but a triple major was not going to help me.
I did not know that. That explains a lot about you.
Yeah, I have a classics degree. I have a hypertextual fiction degree, and I was one class away from having a philosophy degree.
Uh-huh.
But I couldn't. When I learned that I couldn't trade a triple major in for a master's or something like that, sort of like I got these three. Can I upgrade? Yeah, I was like, oh, screw that. I don't want to make senior year all the harder. I wasn't going to grad school, so it didn't really make any difference if I had a triple major versus a double major.
Well, let's shift over to something that is a little more familiar.
Okay, here's my iPhone 10 right here.
Oh, yeah.
Hello,
yeah.
iPhone.
There he is. Yes. Well, that's not where I was going, but let's go with the iPhone. I mean,
I don't know very much about it yet.
Yeah, well, I don't.
Totally not seeing it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm reading reviews from people that have had it, and I'm seeing these. There's the big controversy over the YouTubers. I'm not even sure that deserves any conversation.
Hey, Apple didn't send me one, and I am personally very, very sad.
Well, sad is fine. The ones that are offended are the ones that crack me up.
Apple hasn't sent me anything pretty much ever.
Yeah,
I got invited to WWDC once on Apple's dime, which I couldn't take the VP up on it. But yeah, I don't think Apple's ever sent me anything.
And that's fine because
I'm offended.
Well, I appreciate the first looks, and I definitely appreciate the reviews, but I want to get the thing in my hand and see if it works for me and what it's like. So some of this just I think is a non-story.
Well, I will say that. So you and I are in a different category of user, and what I would say is useful about those early reviews is that if you're everyday user and you're thinking about maybe your next iPhone should be an iPhone 10, you should read the reviews. You absolutely should read them. You should read more than one review. You should read several reviews.
Amen.
People do the roundups. Josh is working on our roundup of other people's reviews now. And, because this is a major gap in sort of the journalistic space at this point, which is we used to have reviews of everything. But that was because there were buying decisions. Right? Software cost money, books cost money, hardware cost money, and people needed to know whether they should spend their money or not. Now that apps are basically free most of the time, there's no point in reviewing them because just go download the damn thing. I don't know if it's good for you or not. And books, same thing. They're cheap enough that it doesn't matter somehow. So it's not like books are other than Take Control books, of course, are sort of these big things. But it used to be really important when some new book would come out. You're like, wow, will this help a certain class of user in a really big way? Let's read the book and do a review of it. And so that people in that group know if they should spend their money. And so realistically, reviews serve a really significant purpose, but all too often we are not seeing either good ones or things that are really designed to, understand what their role in the world is. I have to slap some authors sometimes because I was like, I don't care what your personal opinion is. I care what you believe will be true for the people reading this article. It's written for them. It's not about you. You've made your decision. You've bought the thing, or you've been given the thing, or whatever it is. And there's certainly a room for first person. Don't get me wrong, but all too often people are like, "Well, would I upgrade? Well, yes, I would." Who cares? You're one person. What class of person would you recommend upgrade? Well, if you have the iPhone 4, you should definitely upgrade. But the iPhone 5S, that might not be as big a jump. Blah blah blah. Those are the kinds of things that a good review should be telling you, as well as looking at all of the features. But I do think I blame this on blogs. It's just there's a little bit too much navel gazing going on rather than thinking about the needs of the people who are actually reading the review.
Okay, so no, you bring up an interesting point, and I think you said it's a gap in the journalism at the moment, and so who or how do you fill that gap?
Well, the iPhone 10 reviews, honestly, they're I mean, and just the reviews of big new Apple hardware, actually people are doing pretty well. That if you go out there, you will find 10 or 15 from people who are thinking about it, care thoughtfully from different perspectives, and even if they might be a little navel-gazy, they're still doing so with enough detail that you could say, I think this would work for me. For me, the big difference with the iPhone 10 was that it's pretty much the size of the iPhone 7. And I don't like big phones. I think the Plus is just too big for my hands and my pockets and whatnot. Okay, that's a really important piece of information to convey to someone. That size is just, what does it feel like? And, this is where the personal side comes in, is like, I really don't like bigger phones. I actually sort of prefer the smaller ones. I like the iPhone 5 form factor. That said, okay, that ship has more or less sailed. The SE doesn't meet my needs. And, so you're going here, look, the iPhone 10 gives you the biggest possible screen. It gives you the cameras of the pluses, et cetera, et cetera. That's a big win, for that kind of person. So that said, I think I understand why, many sites don't do more reviews from the standpoint of there's fewer buying decisions in place. But it still feels to me like that's what people are still looking for help with a lot of the time. And there's too little, I think, understanding of the needs of the reader versus the desire to, have your voice out in the world.
So this is going to sound a little strange coming from me, but I think there's a little too much focus sometimes on the tech specs and the tech aspects of it. That I'm more interested in knowing how your iPhone 10 feels in your hand. And I might disagree with you a little bit on the app reviews too, because if I'm a follower of Adam Engst and Tonyas Engst, and I've listened or watched or read you both, and Tanya consistently kind of, I get Tanya, she gets me. And by that I mean from a distance, obviously. That, okay, the apps that she likes and recommends are the apps that I like and recommend. And the ones that you recommend, forget it.
But more my point is that most publications aren't doing app reviews at all.
Well,
doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I think
seriously,
and I think there's a bit of a loss there, because I honestly do.
That's my point, and that's what I'm saying is the software reviews for the most part have disappeared, and that's the problem. And people do, as the sites are doing pretty well with the hardware reviews in terms of big Apple hardware, and which is good, because let's face it, I got the 256 gig iPhone and I got Apple Care, so it was like $1,400 with tax by the time I was done. Like, holy cats! Talk about innovation in the smartphone market. Yeah. A $1,400 phone. Yeah. Apple, man, they know how to innovate. Yeah. But yes, no. I think reviews are fabulous, and that's just it. People do need to know this stuff, but because so many apps are essentially free now, or certainly low cost, I think the whole idea of reviewing an app has largely fallen by the wayside in many publications.
And I think in a way, that's where some of the blogs could fill in the gap, if they wanted to. I agree with you on the navel gazing at times, but I also think there's some value. Again, just like I said, if I can relate to the individual that's writing the reviews, and I've read enough of them, okay, then that person is going to get a lot more credence. That's kind of how we started Mac Notables, is that these people, them and you trust them. Or if you don't know them, you should know them, and you can decide.
Don't trust them.
Well, you got to figure out whether you can trust them or not. But that was kind of the idea behind it at the time. That these are people that are credible, and then other people came along that also developed their credibility, and well, one or two.
That's absolutely true, and this is one of the tenets of publishing is that you do need to have a voice and a level of credibility and things like that. Ironically, we've been doing this long enough that we're no longer all that tied up into it in some ways. So with TidBITS Content Network, we're totally happy to have our customers put their names on what we write. Totally happy. Don't need to have my name on all those articles at all. Been there, done that, 27 years. It doesn't scratch the ego itch anymore at all. And so, so I think that is the one place where it is kind of funny to say, yeah, I don't, I have no ego here. Please do what you want with the article and put your name on it. And that is not a common thing among writers, because usually writers are very interested in maintaining that personality and that voice. So,
is that fair to the reader, Adam?
What's fair? Whether or not
if you write it and somebody else puts their name on it? And
sure.
I said to the reader, not to the writer, but to the reader.
Well, to the reader, I think the reader. See, here's the thing. Most people have no idea who they're reading. Just none. People don't read bylines. You and I and people who are tech involved may know the bylines because they go to the same sites over and over again. But if you are going to, if you are not that person, I mean, you probably know who writes for USA Today, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Ed Baig. So, David Pogue writes, Yahoo, right. Previously New York Times, and we know these outlets. But if you're just going to some random consultant website, it's the person you work with, it's about them as the personality. And if they're providing a consistent service in terms of having this content from TidBITS Content Network, they can be the consistent expert behind that stuff. I mean, I certainly hope people aren't publishing our stuff and then going and providing truly terrible service. But I really don't think so. I mean, the gap that we're filling is people are too busy and or are not necessarily great writers. That's a skill. It's a very different skill than being able to troubleshoot your Mac problems. And so, I mean, most of the consultants I've talked to, in fact, pretty much all the consultants I've talked to, really, really know their stuff. And they know as much as I do or more in a lot of cases about various different topics and technical topics. And so I have no real issues with them using this. And keep in mind, what we're writing is not meant to be our personal voice in a big way. So stuff that you read from me in TidBITS will sound a lot more like me because I know that you know who I am, and I'm going to use details that only make sense in the context of TidBITS. TidBITS Content Network articles have none of that because they have to work for everybody. And plus, we're also encouraging people to add personal details if they so wish, and they have the time and the inclination, because that's one of the things, again, does make the article a little better. If the article is about something and there was a local event that everyone who's reading this would probably know about, mention the local event. I can't know that. There's no way I could. But, the consultant who's actually publishing the stuff up can do that. I mean, so much of what we're providing really is facts, right? I mean, there's small amounts of opinion, like what the best Apple TV for the price is, something like that. But the fact is when we're telling you how to do something, how to use the iPad multitasking swipes, those are facts. They're incontrovertible. They're just there, right? We don't own them. And the fact that I'm telling you in a specific way, hopefully the part of that that's really good is that I've done it in a concise, accurate fashion, rather than something that might not be correct. And and that's what you're getting really is the difference. We don't do opinion pieces. So this isn't like our putting our words in someone else's mouth where we think that Tim Cook should be fired because obviously he's the devil spawn or something. I mean, that's just completely outside the venue of what we're providing. We're providing, top-notch technical content that tells you how to do something. So it is, I think, incontrovertible. It's not really opinion. It's not really voice. It's just, this is what you need to know.
So let's recap here. We've talked about security.
Do you remember everything?
Well, we've talked about security. We've talked about medicine. We've talked about journalism. Should we get into
Don't forget philosophy.
Philosophy. Should we get into politics?
Yeah, no.
No.
I saw that. I never open Apple News. I unsubscribed from. I got rid of all the news stunts that come in my email. I am blissfully news free.
Okay, that's
more productive.
That's a topic for another time. Wow, that's interesting.
Blissfully.
Okay.
I can't actually say completely news free, but but stuff. I figure the important stuff trickles in.
Yeah.
But now my basic philosophy of it is that if something is not going to be news in 2 weeks, I don't need to know.
Interesting.
Seriously, there's a difference between news and what will be history. If it's not going to be history, it's not relevant. It just isn't. And you're not going to change your behavior on it. You're not going to make any different decisions. It's just taking up space in your brain and causing some level of psychological reaction. Possibly good, possibly bad. I don't know. It depends on who you are and what the event is. But taking up space in my brain. I got too little space in my brain as it is. I'm full.
Okay.
And Apple keeps releasing new stuff that I have to shoehorn in there.
Yeah. And there's an iPhone 10 sitting just below the camera line.
There is. There's an iPhone 10 right there, and I don't know how facial recognition works yet because it just activated when we started this call. I'm like, the timing is terrible.
All right, well, let's wrap here so you can start playing with facial recognition. And then come back again, and let's not make it as long next time, but come back again. We'll talk about history and facial recognition and what else? Oh, and being blissfully news free. I like this. I like it. We get the whole show planned already.
It's a need to know basis, and I don't need to know.
I'm
pretty clear that I don't need to know. There's lots of things I do not need to know.
This is Adam Engst, and he does not need to know.
Well, I should get a t-shirt for that. Don't need to know.
Yeah. And, of course, TidBITS.com is where you can go to subscribe to see everything that Adam and Tonya are doing. And
that you think you do need to know.
That you definitely need to know. They do not put anything out that you don't need to know.
It actually is true. That's why we put out relatively little stuff each week, because we only focus on the stuff things we think you need to know.
Yeah. All right, so go and check it out. Adam practices what he preaches.
And TidBITS Content Network for people who want to put out their own stuff that their readers need to know.
No. Okay.
But it doesn't have my name on it. So.
Okay. And the website for that is?
tcn.tidbits.com.
Perfect.
Adam, Content Network.
Thank you. It's good to see you. It's been too long. It's been too long.
Indeed, Chuck.
We will do it again.
Soon, I hope.
Okay. Enjoy the iPhone 10.
I hope. Everyone else seems to be, so I'm fingers crossed.
Mine's sitting in the kitchen. That's where I'm headed.
All right. Bye, Chuck.
I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Notables on MacVoices. That's Adam Engst. Folks, thanks for joining us. This has been all over the place, and it's been so much fun. I hope you've enjoyed it, too. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.